Hi, I'm Andy Acton.
And I'm Chris Strevens.
This is Dentology, the Business of Dentistry podcast. When you have a conversation with people who, Luke in no way is old, but he's got some dental experience under his belt, and you hear about what the NHS kind of gave him in terms of skills and experience, when you draw that into the modern language and the modern context, it gives it a very different perspective, doesn't it, in terms of what the NHS has to offer the profession?
Yeah, definitely. I think also that it's yet another one about communication and that the NHS, even in its current guise, is useful because it helps you learn techniques and communication, if only because of the volume of people you see, which you can then go on to use elsewhere.
Yeah.
I thought it was fascinating.
And I love when you see that kind of long tail transition from, he did a lot of work in the NHS and then kind of found his comfort in private dentistry and he did Chris Orr's course, but then his tribe is the BACD.
Yeah.
And it's lovely when you see that situation where somebody finds a group they resonate with and then they obviously resonate with you because he's currently the BACD president, and it's something really sweet that the careers that morph in that way.
And I love part, honesty for, part of the reason he became a dentist because of the 911 Turbo on the next door neighbour's drive, and it sort of says, doesn't it, that actually most cases we are influenced by those sort of things. There were other things, but it was great that he sort of said, and he had a 911 Turbo on his drive.
I think sometimes it's just what's the thing that turns your head. It might not necessarily lead you to make that final decision, but certain things in life just kind of get your attention.
Yeah, just they stick to you, don't they? And they go, oh, okay.
Yeah,
really brilliant. It was really nice. He's a lovely guy, actually.
If you're enjoying the Dentology podcast, if you could subscribe, that would be great, because we put a new episode out every 7 o'clock in the morning, every single Monday, every week.
We do indeed.
Well, summer might have actually caught up with us.
It is. We are both sitting here in shorts, for those of you who can't see our legs.
Yep.
It's a lovely, beautiful day. I can see the birds flying. What a way to introduce our next guest.
And on a bright day, it doesn't need brightening anymore, but...
Is he a tooth whitening specialist?
I think we have a dentist that's going to brighten our mood even more. Because he is a very uplifting, very energetic and very likeable Dr. Luke Hutchings, who's a dentist and also currently president of the BACD.
Oh, he should have a chain around his neck. I don't know if you get a chain around your neck.
What, like a mayor?
BACD
or something.
Nice, there's someone in the background who's going, don't say that, that's fine.
Welcome, Luke. How are you doing?
I'm really well, guys. I'm just disappointed I didn't wear my shorts.
See now. We should have sent you the memo.
Well, it's a constant piss take at work, actually, because Chris, who I work with, Dr. Leach, is always taking the mickey out of me for being in shorts, no matter what the weather.
Right, too.
Are you like the equivalent of a postman?
I am.
Are you like the dental postman?
I am dental postman, definitely.
So why no shorts today?
Because I have to be clinical. So when I'm clinical, I have to be in proper stuff.
Oh, yeah, true.
You can't have a well-respected dental member of the community.
True. Forgot about that, yeah.
But otherwise, no, I'm very much shorts and T-shirt kind of guy.
Excellent, aren't we?
To start off with, Luke, I'm often surprised at how many dentists are inspired so young to join the profession. Yeah, we get people who... I think we had one person that kind of said they were 3 or 4 years old and they kind of uttered the word.
Or as Millard said, when they spun the bottle or something and it pointed towards a syringe and he was in.
That's right.
He was either going to be a drug dealer or a dentist.
Yeah. And I think in your case, you were inspired by a neighbour.
I was, yeah.
How old were you and what was it about the neighbour that inspired you?
Swimming pool, big car.
Well, this is the question, Chris. It was whether or not you wanted the genuine answer or whether you wanted the...
No, let's just be real, very real, Luke. Come on, man.
So I was 6 or 7 years old, actually. And we lived in a little tiny village in Herefordshire called Webley, which is this little tiny black and white village that nothing ever happens in. And my next door neighbour was actually the local dentist. So the dental practice was literally in a barn across the road from my house. And James was just the nicest man. Sadly, he went on to have a stroke and suffered from, a lot of stress and stuff that a lot of us people in dentistry do. Retired early. But Jonathan, his son, still runs the practice there.
Oh, wow.
He was just a bit of an inspiration at that point. it helped, obviously, that my brother had also declared an interest in wanting to be a dentist.
Right.
And I was an ultra competitive kid. So it was anything that anyone else can do, I can definitely do better. And that definitely stems from my brother as well. If he wanted to be the football captain, I was going to be a better football captain. If he wanted to score X amount of points in rugby, I was going to score more points in rugby than him.
Wow.
So there was that competitive element. James did have a nice 911 turbo as well. That was sat on his drive.
That helps.
So there was a bit of a motivating factor to that as well. Nice car, nice house, lovely guy. Seemed like he enjoyed life. And yeah, it seemed like a worthwhile profession. Everyone in the village liked him. He was well known. And just, genuine from there, I thought that was something I can get into.
Was there any history within your family?
No, not at all.
On the medic side or health at all?
So my father was a timber merchant. So he imported hardwoods from South America and was in the second largest timber merchant company in the UK. My mum was a florist. So there was nothing at all that was anything medical in any way.
But lovely traditional professions, aren't they?
Yeah, so very much away from the medical
side. Is your brother a dentist as well? No, he's not. He didn't.
I beat him, Chris.
Really?
I don't know if I actually did, if you put it back to... He is now a computer nerd.
Right.
He won't mind me saying that. He does something in the dark arts of computing that I don't quite understand.
Okay.
So he does hardware, software engineering, breaks through firewalls and all sorts of weird and wacky things that are beyond my scope of practice.
Yeah.
He's like the IT support, basically. Whenever I have a problem, I ring up
what's this mean?
Neil, can you log in?
Brilliant. And we'll come to your dental school experience before that. But before you got to that stage, there was quite a tough life lesson for you, wasn't there? Because you ended up missing a year of school. You suffered with colitis quite badly.
Yeah.
What was that period like?
It was, that 16, 17-year-old period in your life where you want to be out drinking, pulling birds.
It's the growing up years, isn't it?
16 or 17-year-old lads want to do.
Yeah.
I think that was the bit that I missed most rather than the education. I did miss a year of A-level and had to take a year out after that as well to have multiple surgeries and stuff like that. It was formative, I suppose, because at that point, I'd gone through all of the UCAS applications and got all the kind of stuff that I needed, but then obviously had to declare that, I'd been unwell and blah, 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 and potentially couldn't take the place. And they all turned around and said to me, there's no way you'll cope with a dental course. So we're going to retract our offers, basically, as near as damn it.
Oh, wow.
So I had to, as well as going through the medical stuff at that point, fight the toss that actually I would cope with that, get through dentistry and, be okay, basically. So it definitely gave me a bit more grit and determination. And
also emotionally as well, because you've seen your neighbour, you decided as quite a young kid that this was going to be your path. So to have this happen, and then the people who are going to give you that education say, actually, no, we're not going to allow you to come on the course.
Yeah, it was one of those ones that it's a bit of a kick in the teeth.
Yeah, I bet.
It depends, like a lot of things. There are a lot of people that have gone through similar illnesses, and you've got two ways that you can come out the other side. You can either let it defeat you, which, with a lot of people with illnesses, sadly, they do.
Yeah.
Or you can take it and say, well, actually, I'm going to beat that. I'm going to use that as fuel to move me forward and achieve something or what I want to do with life.
And I think very often, I think it's the things that have happened. Yeah, I think it's the things that have happened in your life before you get ill that kind of, when you get to that fork in the road, determines which way you go. Because I think in that moment you feel unwell, kind of you feel a bit battered and beaten. And I think that kind of resilience and that kind of positive outlook on life is something that's kind of been fostered in you by your parents or in other ways. So when that moment comes, you're able to cope with it as opposed to crumble.
And a 911.
Yeah. I never quite got around to buying.
I said, did you ever buy one? Did you ever buy one?
No, I had a Boxster, I had an M3. I'm currently driving a sensible family car.
We've all had the sensible family car.
Tell me about it. But there we go. It is what it is.
People carriers.
Yeah, that's the one. Lots of seats for the footy on a Sunday. That's
the one.
So then roll forward. You got yourself well. You did get your place.
Yeah.
You went to Cardiff.
I did.
Qualifying in 2002. What was your dental school experience like?
Dental school back in the day.
Made up for 16 and 17.
It's interesting, isn't it? I'm very glad social media wasn't a thing. Because I genuinely look back on half the things that we did at university and half of the social engagements and outings that we had in the evening, and think if any of those had been recorded, I wonder whether or not half of us would have actually passed.
Oh, wow.
So that is definitely a thing that I'm glad I didn't have to negotiate that. In terms of the education, Cardiff, and I think most of the dental schools at that point were very much breeding basic NHS dentists.
Yep.
It was very much to kind of fuel the need of service in the populace around us, which was at that point in time, probably 95% to 99% NHS predominant. So I obviously, like most people, came out of dental school thinking I was the big I am and the dog's bollocks, because I think everyone comes out and thinks, oh, I'm great. And then it's only when you actually get to that first job and that first position, you actually realize you don't know anything.
That's when you really find out.
And that's when you start to learn. Yeah, that's when you realize my base knowledge of the stuff I probably don't need to know actually is there. But now I need to actually learn how to be a dentist.
Yeah.
So it equipped me with the basic skills and the basic knowledge. But I'd say it took me the next 15 to 20 years of progression and career development to say I'm okay at dentistry.
I think in many ways it's a bit like getting a driving license. You know, at 10 o'clock in the morning, you're a learner and you need somebody next to you. You have your driving test, and by midday, you're unleashed on the world with a vehicle. And so whilst you have a license, you don't actually learn how to really drive and navigate the world and all the other bizarre things that happen on the road for a few years. Just rolling back to something you said about not having social media. Do you think it's harder for young people today, and not necessarily just in a dental setting, because they've always got kind of 1% of their mind is on how's that going to look, how I behave, what should I post? And I guess it kind of feeds into how authentic people are, because they're always thinking about how others are going to perceive them.
I think a lot of evidence is actually out there on mental health issues and use of phones, use of social media, because it does always portray an idealized version of someone.
Yeah.
So nobody ever posts their bad days on social media.
No, that's always great stuff.
I had a shit day, this happened, I had to get the patient back in and take another scan, I had to do X, Y, and Z. Yeah. It's only ever your golden, fantastic, this is my best work, this is my... So there is that perception, and it is easy to get drawn into the trap of I'm not good enough because I'm not doing things as well as these other people. There's also, as well, with social media, a lot of people learning from Instagram and Facebook and stuff like that, which I don't think is an appropriate thing either.
It's not a great place to learn anything.
And it's kind of like, where did you learn to do that? Well, I saw somebody do that on a post on Instagram, so I thought I'd give it a go. And you sit there and think, well, there's no evidence base. There's no long-term study and backup to it. But you saw it on Instagram. Do you think that's wise? It's a really hard thing to come to terms with, I think. I think it's not doing the profession any great benefits. It's great from a networking standpoint, and from that perspective, fantastic. But from actually looking at clinical base and stuff like that, I think you have to take a lot of it with a pinch of salt, is what I would say.
Definitely.
In terms of my kids and in terms of like the youth of today coming forward, I'm very kind of protective of them being on social media and trying to negate how much time they spend on it.
Definitely.
Because you look at eating disorders and you look at problems like that, and you know, you look at
anxiety and stress.
Exactly, anxiety's through the roof. And you look at the children. So if we look at my 11-year-old daughter's class, for example, there's I think 6 or 7 kids in that class that have been diagnosed anxious on SENS register, need extra help.
Wow.
And a lot of it's actually stemmed post-COVID and post kind of lockdown and stuff like that.
11 years old.
I think there's still going to be a generation of people that we don't really understand what the last few years have been like and how that's going to affect their teenage and adult life. So it will be interesting. I think, you know, you look at the young dentists these days and you look at their education and how that's been lacking for them in the last few years, and how much they've missed in those formative years of getting their driving license, Andy. There'll be sections of their driving license where they've completely missed out. That's what the left indicator does.
It's frightening, really, isn't it?
It's disheartening. And talking to some of the younger dentists in the student now, because I obviously get quite a lot of interaction. You know, a couple of them now, some of the students don't feel they're very well supported. They don't feel like they're getting the education they deserve. But that's they're being let down by the system, shall we say.
So you qualified back in 2002, and then for 5 years did a significant amount of work on the NHS.
Yep.
So for 5 years you were working. How did you find that as a period? And it's kind of a twofold question. Like, what did it enable you to do in terms of developing your clinical skills and your communication skills? But there's also a trend among younger dentists to kind of qualify and quickly get out of the NHS to move private. I'd be interested to know what you learned and what that 5 year period post qualification gave you in terms of setting you up for your future.
So it's very much a double-edged sword in many ways. You've got to remember as well, back then, the UDA system wasn't a thing.
Yeah.
So it was a very different NHS system that we were working in to what we're working in now.
It's effectively items of service. So you delivered dentistry, you got paid for it.
So you came in, you had an amalgam. I think it was like £11 for an amalgam filling. And then everyone tried to stick 7 pins in there because you got paid £1.80 for a pin. So you could double your amalgam filling fee to... Those were the games, obviously. That wasn't me. I was a good person.
No, that's right. Yeah.
It allowed you to make mistakes, and it allowed you to build up some clinical skills and allow you to develop a rapport with patients and actually work in an environment where the expectation of perfect dentistry wasn't there, I suppose. Would I do that now, and is that available in the NHS system at the moment? I don't think it is. I think that's the problem. I don't think... Once you get past that DFT placement and that training place, the support possibly isn't there. And a lot of the time you might just become a machine that's pumping out numbers, because a lot of the places nowadays it's corporate based and it's, looking at finance and figures. For me, it was definitely a benefit because it meant I could see a lot of patients. I could make mistakes, fix those mistakes. And there wasn't a great deal of kind of, I don't want to say comeback, but it wasn't like, oh my God, you've made a mistake, let's report you to the GDC. It was very much, we are practicing dentists, we are learning dentistry as we practice. So yeah, it's a different time in dentistry then. Do I think everyone should come out and become a private dentist right now? It's a hard one, because I actually think potentially NHS dentistry over the next few years might not be the same format that we've seen. I think we're going to have to move more to emergent core system. And I think there will have to be probably in place more private training systems potentially to actually transition those younger dentists into private roles where they can have some mentorship. I know there's lots of people that are actually doing that now, picking up people early in their career that show promise and helping them bring them on. So in the practice, we've had a few younger dentists that have been a year qualified, 2 years qualified, and myself and a lot of the other clinicians in the practice have just sat down with them 2, 3, 4 times a week and just tried to impart knowledge of our 20 odd years of mistakes, basically.
I think that mentorship's really, really valuable. How was the transition for you? Because 5 years pretty much exclusively on the NHS, that's a lot of work, a lot of teeth, a lot of treatments, but also a lot of built up repetitive behaviour in terms of how you behaved as a clinician. So then in 2011, you moved to Hampshire and you move into a private practice. So how did you personally find that transition from doing kind of high volume NHS repetitive work to then sliding into a private situation?
I found it fantastic. It was wonderful. I was never the quickest NHS worker. I never gamed the NHS. I never made oodles of money on the NHS. I was probably a shit NHS associate.
You were the best private NHS dentist out there.
Correct, yeah. So even when I was doing NHS dentistry, I probably wanted to do NHS dentistry as well as I could do NHS dentistry. And that transition has just transitioned into doing private dentistry well. It was a fairly smooth transition, honestly. I think I've always had a fairly personable personality type with people. I've always been able to communicate fairly well with patients. So that's not been a significant issue. And that's 90% of the battle, actually. If you communicate well,
definitely
able to talk to a person and kind of get across your message, they become your raving fans, basically, at the end of the day. So as long as you can do that.
Is that a skill you've learned, or have you always been had good interpersonal skills and been interested in people?
I don't know the answer to that. You have to ask my wife that one, Andy. Well, she'll tell me. that actually I am awkward, borderline autistic, and just not able to communicate. But I think it comes down to...
That sounds like words being repeated then.
Yeah, it does. Every Sunday in the pub when we go and meet our friends. It's definitely something I've developed more, I think. Right. It's definitely something where I've been put in what would have been uncomfortable situations for me. So it is, with development through various other things, like teaching and getting onto stage, talking about stuff. And
didn't do any formal training or anything. You didn't go on any sort of sales courses or communication courses.
But I think with communication, for me, one of the key characteristics of good communicators are being authentic. And you describe yourself as being slightly autistic, borderline autistic, slightly awkward. But if that's as you are, if that is just part of how you are and how you communicate, I think that there's something quite warm about people who aren't too well polished and trained.
You're Elon Musk, aren't you? Elon is a bit odd.
That authenticity in communication.
It's true. It's true.
Comes through quite strongly. So it's just interesting to know how you view it from your side.
I think definitely if you're just honest and authentic with people, it's when you start to kind of maybe polish and blur the lines of truth slightly, people will pick up on that.
And pretend to be something you're not.
That's definitely a mistake. You just want to be yourself, and that comes across to everyone that you're talking to, I think.
And some people will like you and some people won't, and those ones that don't won't come again.
Yeah, and that's fine as well.
That's a really important lesson to learn as well, though, because to be honest with you, you don't have to treat everyone.
No.
Yes.
And that is something that a lot of younger dentists get fallen into that trap of, because they want to be doing dentistry, so they think they have to take on every single case. Where actually you will save a lot of headaches when you learn early on the people you do want to treat and the people you don't want to treat. So that's definitely an interesting point as well.
I think that's where the communication is, isn't it? And that relationship thing, because we all make snap. What is it? How long do you get? 5 seconds or something to make a good first impression. But we do on everything we do, don't we? When you meet someone, you make a judgment, and it works the same with patients and
that
dentists.
First impression sticks with you.
Quite a really while, hard to move it on,
isn't it? And then back in 2011, 2012, you did Chris Orr's course.
I did,
And isn't it amazing that you can just say Chris Orr's course and people go, yep, I know what that is without having to qualify it in any way. And you say that since you did that course, you haven't looked back since. What was it about that course that enables you to say that? What was the turning point? This week's episode is brought to you in partnership with Ultimate Dental Business. We know as guys who have supported dentists for over 25 years and through hosting this podcast that building business skills in dentistry is vital. Time and again, we hear from dentists who tell us that they find the business side of dentistry the most challenging. And we know that stress and pressure comes from doing things we don't feel well equipped to do. That is why we are delighted to be part of Ultimate Dental Business, the new dental business hub delivering top-tier business training for dentists. Founded by Dr. Brad Thornton and Dr. Krupal Shah, Ultimate Dental Business is a response to the lack of robust dental business education currently available. Through our effective collective discussions with dentists, it was clear they most needed good structure and effective guidance to give them the knowledge and tools to be successful dental business owners, and to create a business that serves them rather than the business that takes all their time and energy to keep going. To find out more about developing your own business education, click on the link in the show notes or go to ultimatedentalbusiness.com.
So prior to Chris's course, I had a toolbox with lots of pieces of puzzles together in there. And Chris basically allowed you to put the pieces of the puzzles together, if that made sense. So it completed the picture effectively. So it enabled me and probably every other person that sat on the course to look at dentistry in a more comprehensive way and actually to do a comprehensive overview of everything.
Right.
That's the differential again, a lot of the time between private dentistry and NHS dentistry. NHS dentistry is very single tooth, single unit, firefighting. Private dentistry, in my humble opinion, a lot of the time can be that, but it shouldn't be. It should be a comprehensive view of that person's oral health, mouth health, function. Have they got wear, which is going to be probably the biggest litigious thing that comes up over the next thing. Are we treating the wear? Are we monitoring the wear? Why are we monitoring wear? Because it's only going to get worse. But that's another story entirely. But Chris kind of opened my eyes to how we can treat patients as a comprehensive treatment plan rather than just piecemeal trying to fix the single parts, if that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely.
I think you should probably also say Chris and Zainab's course.
Right.
Because Zainab will be in the background as well if she doesn't hear her name going, no one ever mentions me. It's always the Chris Hall course.
Yeah,
and she's obviously the kind of admin behind the scenes that makes sure that Chris gets to where he needs to get to in the day, I think.
Yeah.
Tells him which tie to wear which day.
And then I guess it put you on a different trajectory, because back in 2021 you won the Aesthetic Dentist of the Year award.
I did, yeah.
And you might have also won the Patient Care Southeast at the Private Dentistry Awards in 2022.
How did you know that, Andy?
I guess for people watching on YouTube might have worked out how I was able to answer.
Yeah, because I'm impressed with your memory.
And if you're listening onto a podcast, jump on YouTube and you'll find out. You want to listen around about the 22-minute mark.
I'll have to put my glasses back on to see it. That's the only problem in the background there. So yeah, that was probably the culmination. So if we skip from 2011 to that point, effectively, I joined the BACD at the end of Chris's course.
Right.
We can talk about that in a bit, I guess.
Yeah.
That opens up meeting a whole realm of people that I didn't knew existed before. And in that 10-year period,
wow,
I've probably made some of my best friends in dentistry. I've made,
Brilliant.
lifelong mates. I've met my family. I've met my kind of tribe, as we want to put it.
Yeah.
Like-minded people that kind of click along and bounce off each other. The awards, they get a bad rap, awards, don't they? Technically.
Yeah.
The Aesthetic Dentistry Awards are one I like because actually they were based on an objective measure. They were based on clinical work.
Yeah.
So they were the ones, as a lifelong associate, they were the ones that kind of meant something to me, if that makes sense, because it was based on my clinical work.
Right. Yeah.
It was my cases, it was my composite work, it was my ceramic work.
Yeah.
So that was probably to me more important than the patient care one. And we've won the private dentistry best practice. I think it's 19 awards over the last 5 years now.
Wow.
So we're doing okay as a practice.
Yeah.
I think I'm on 7 of those through various clinically based award things. It's a nice pat on the back.
So it's not bad for marketing.
It's good for marketing.
I think a lot of it's where you position it. I think from the team point of view, I think it's really special. I think teams really love it. It's kind of a little bit like the dental Oscars when you get to go to the event. That's nice.
This is the thing with these awards. They're a great day out. There's a really great positive buzz. And the teams do come back from them buzzing and excited to get back to work.
And also, I think from a patient point of view, people like to be associated with businesses that are doing well and having success. And if you can wave awards around, I think there's a positive that goes with that.
They've got very limited other criteria to compare you, have they?
Yes.
So therefore, something like that is like, oh, okay.
It definitely gets commented on quite a lot by patients,
which is
new patients when they come into the practice.
You sort of glossed over the BACD thing, and you've been involved there for many years.
I was going to say, come back to the BACD.
Yeah, I mean, you got involved in the sort of the committee level back in 2012, and in those early days, as a clinician, but as part of the wider dental community, what did the BACD offer you that kind of wasn't out there anywhere else?
So the initial formation of the BACD was very much at that point in time. So the BACD is actually 20 years this year. So it had been going for a little bit more time than I got engaged with. At that point in time, finding cosmetic dentistry and finding world-class peers to teach you that, you had to fly to the US. You had to fly to, Europe. You had to go 4 or 5 hours away to find those people to teach you. And what the BACD did was brought world-class clinicians in to a central hub to teach you those skills effectively. Right. That was in terms of the educational offering. The kind of immeasurable things around that were finding the place that you belong. Yep. It was finding that I know full well if I ever have a problem, if I have an issue, I have something that I'm not sure of, I can pick up the phone and I know 20 or 30 people.
Someone who can help.
20 or 30 people that will sit there and say, stop being an idiot, Luke. It's absolutely fine. Get back to do X, Y, and Z. It'll be good. And that's whether it's a life something, that's whether it's a dental something, that's whether it's, me being an idiot, I've always got someone that'll have my back.
That's great to have that
very much
support
the thing.
network, isn't it? That's brilliant
It's the
to have that.
networking
Yeah,
for me
I
every day of the
think
week.
dentistry,
everybody needs one.
Yeah, and I think dentistry as a profession can be quite lonely at principal level, but also at associate level. I don't think that people talk enough. We were talking in an earlier episode about how people don't share their failures. They don't talk about problems and things that aren't going well. So to hear that the BACD provides that as a community through the relationships you've got is fabulous. And obviously your involvement in the BACD was ongoing and continuous to the point where you're president this year, which is fabulous.
I am indeed.
It's fabulous news. And what have been your priorities during your presidency?
This is a really interesting question because everyone asked you that, and it is very much like a longitudinal institution that you already have things set up for multiple years in advance of where you're going to be. So I'm actually sat there now looking at conferences in 26 and 27 rather than 24 and 25.
So you're almost you're inheriting some of the things that we've done before.
It's very much. We sat down probably about 4 or 5 years ago when Chris McConnell was president.
Right, yeah.
And we very much tried to plot a path to where we want the ship to sail over the next few years. And it is very much trying to continue our inclusivity. It's very much trying to entice new young dentists, keep our older populace. It's a hard thing to do. Keeping everyone happy is not simple in many things in life. It's about trying to offer as much benefit to our membership as we can do, still offering world-class clinicians coming across and educating, at significantly reduced fees to what they'd be paying to go and see them. Obviously, we've got a whole plethora of other member benefits as well. There's 14 or 15 things in terms of, reduction in social media postings and marketing companies, materials, X, Y, and Z. So there's lots of other kind of tangible benefits. And again, it is the intangible benefits that I think you can't really put a price on.
That community. And a lot of that is it's like lots of groups, isn't it? If you invest in it, it invests in you.
Correct. You get what you put into it, definitely. So for my presidency, it's very much steering the ship. It's very much negotiating, which are still challenging times, actually, a conference organizer's life. Because costs are still astronomical in terms of...
And it's not an insignificant event, the conference and the Congress.
It's a 3-day conference at fairly prestigious venues across London this year. Then we're in Manchester next year. So back to London the year after. There are fairly substantial figures and costs that we're talking about.
Definitely.
But we're very lucky. We've got good support from trade, and we get good trade sponsorship every time we hold an event. We've got a very loyal core membership base that return year in, year out, and I think we definitely have a lot to offer still in terms of educating people and being the go-to place for cosmetic dentistry in the UK, really and truly.
Absolutely. Just picking up on the cosmetic dentistry bit and linking that with your role in the BACD, your awards, but also going back to the social media bit. Has the term cosmetic dentistry, has that commoditized, devalued dentistry in any way?
Corrupted.
Where, people use this word cosmetic and it gets bandied around and it sort of sounds like, composite or veneers or whitening. But does that kind of not necessarily tell the full story in terms of what you have to do as a clinician before you get to the cosmetic bit? Are the public kind of getting a skewed view of where dentistry is at?
It's an interesting question, that one. I think it depends on the ethic of the clinician that's treating a lot of the time, to be 100% honest with you. Most patients that come in to see me, and I can only really draw on my own base, if that makes sense, always come with dental baggage. The vast majority of them are, I've been at a practice for 10, 15, 20 years. I'm aware my teeth are now starting to look a little bit worse. What can you do about it, Luke? And then there's that conversation about, I know that you've seen this beautiful case where they just had 6 veneers and they went away happy and all things are great. But what you didn't see was the fact that all of their posterior teeth were worn. They've lost their occlusal vertical dimension. They're smashing everything to pieces unless all of that is fixed. So there is definitely a big need for stabilization phase in a lot of our treatment plans. So there's definitely a lot of functional bias that comes into a lot of things. the difficulty is there are certain clinicians potentially that will still just do the cosmetic dentistry. So they will still just do the bonding, the veneers. They'll say, your case isn't ideal for this. Our work will probably last 3 to 5 years. And then potentially after that, we might need to look at it again, which for me doesn't sit well in my wheelhouse. I'd rather be able to say to someone, I've fixed your teeth and let's make them look good. I think all dentistry should have a kind of lens of we can make things look cosmetic. Because nobody wants their teeth to be fixed that look shit, realistically.
No. And I think there's also the issue as well that there's an education piece, because having to educate and communicate so the patient understands the value of the non-sexy dentistry, so that the sexy bit looks good for longer. And I think that's where the challenge is. People go, but I
want to look like this.
I've only got so much money to spend. I don't want to look good. It's like, well, for your long-term health, actually, that money spent on getting yourself stable and already fit would make more sense. And I think there's a big communication job within dentistry to explain the value of the stuff that kind of sits behind the scenes, that supporting work and the foundational work.
It surprises me how switched on patients are to that, though.
Really?
If you sit down and actually have a conversation,
so if you explain it well,
and go through the process and explain why something will happen, then I would say 90% of the time you convert that patient to a patient that wants to engage in that process.
Oh, wow.
Which for you is really rewarding. The fact that there are people that go, I get it. Yeah, that makes complete sense. But I think that is an art of education and communication,
and honesty,
a combination of.
Because actually you go down the process of explaining as opposed to just saying, I can do that.
No, definitely. Problem is they can go down the road and they'll see someone that
that's right. That is,
So there are, realistically what happens then is in 3 to 5 years' time when what they've done's failed, is you see them back on your doorstep.
Yes.
And then they go, I've had this done. I know you said it wouldn't work. And here we are again in the situation where, look, you said it would break. It's broken.
Yeah.
And then you're like, well, sat there going, I told you so. You don't say it. You sit there and go, I know we had that conversation. Unfortunately, now it's a little bit more difficult to put.
And it's more expensive, isn't it? It's a bit like the builder who goes bust on your work site and then someone else comes in and goes, ooh.
Yeah.
They've come with more dental baggage, effectively.
Yeah, that's right.
So there's more to unpack, more to unpick to get it right.
Yeah.
So Luke, if we roll forward a few years and your 2 kids come to you and they say, Dad, should we do dentistry? What would you say?
I've got no problems with that one in answering it, because I have no doubt either of them want to be dentists.
That's because you haven't got a 9/11. That's what it is.
Well, already, even at their ages now, they've already kind of put themselves out.
So we're 11 and 8 at home.
Right.
The 11-year-old is super, super musical. And she wants to go something musical.
Fabulous.
Either that or a marine biologist, apparently.
Okay, that's random.
To be a marine biologist, tell her she needs to get
rock concerts in the evening.
No. When she does a GCSE, you need to tell her she has to get 7 C's to be a marine biologist.
Boom, boom.
Okay, I get that.
That's because we had a bloke who was a marine biologist, wasn't it?
I'm going to use that dad joke for the later.
Dreadful joke.
She needs to have the singing, though, to communicate with the whales.
Yeah.
The youngest one wants to be an Olympic gymnast.
Okay.
Task focused.
Great ambitions.
I would definitely encourage people to become dentists, for sure. It's a career that I love. I wholeheartedly would endorse it. If it was someone that can then guide you through that process. So for the second generation, the third generation, well, let's be honest, they probably would get a leg up in their professional development. Absolutely, I would say, get involved, do it. For somebody that had no idea what they were getting themselves into, I would probably educate them. Let's leave it at that.
Interesting.
Luke, we always finish up the same way. We have 2 questions for you. And the first one is, you can be a fly on a wall in a situation. Where are you and who's there?
I probably would want to be on Apollo 11, I think. Moon landing. I just think that opportunity to tread where no one has ever trod before you is just a fantastic thing. To sit there with those boys and work out, were they shit scared like I would have been?
Yeah.
Or were they really excited? What was kind of the emotional energy going through the room?
Well, that was back in 1969, and they're just starting talking about having a project to go back and build a station on the moon and everything else. So your time might come.
In fact, I've got a 7-inch single, which is the recording of the moon landing. That shows how old I am, doesn't it? My mum and dad bought it for me. I can remember sitting up because it must have happened in the middle of the night. I remember sitting watching it.
It was June 1969, wasn't it?
It was. I feel sorry for Michael Collins.
Yeah.
Unless you know, you don't know, do you?
No, that's right.
Sat there orbiting the moon.
Yeah.
Getting none of the credit.
That's right.
But that's like coming second in the Olympics, isn't it? Unfortunately,
nobody remembers.
Everybody remembers the gold
absolutely.
medalist, isn't it? Yeah. And our follow-up question is, you get the opportunity to meet somebody, sit down, have a nice pint of beer or glass of wine or a coffee.
Neil Armstrong.
Who are you going to sit down and have a chat to?
For me, probably my granddad.
Sweet.
Okay.
Because I never met him.
Is this on your mum's side or your dad's side?
On my mum's side.
On your mum's side, right.
On my mum's side. So my granddad on my mum's side. Never met him. Always wanted to. Sounded like the most fascinating character. So it's just from an emotive point of view, you know, when you look back in time and just you hear so many stories about a person and so much kind of goes through the family rhetoric about people. And you never had that opportunity. There were 2 bits of the conversation I would have with him. Number one, he was quite an influential chap at one point in time. So he actually owned gold mines in South Africa, interestingly.
Wow.
And number 2, he was a alcoholic. So gambled away the gold mines on a game of poker.
Excellent.
No.
So he sounds like the most fascinating person you want to sit down and have a beer with.
Flipping it.
And maybe pick up a deck of cards with. But I just one of the people from time that I would have loved to have met.
Yeah.
There's obviously thousands and thousands and thousands of other people when you ask that question though.
Yeah.
You sit there and there's a whole list of people as long as your arm. But
it's quite often, a lot of people want to meet a grandpa, a granddad of some description. It's quite interesting.
Yeah.
Because it's that connection to the past, isn't it?
Correct. To see where your roots have come from, I guess.
Yeah.
To see why my mother is quite so psychopathic as she is it my granddad or my grandmother? I don't know.
Yeah.
But the great thing is you do have those stories. You know, you can still share those stories with, you know, your parents and your kids. So these kind of people live on through stories, but it's not quite the same as having that first hand
And years to
conversation.
come, his children, Luke's children, will be able to see Grandad on YouTube on a podcast.
Exactly.
Oh God, yeah.
Look at that.
That's a very good point, isn't it?
Yeah, look at that.
But
You're
it's all
now
been good.
preserved
It's been good
for posterity.
Yeah.
Pickle for prosperity.
Pickle.
I'm going for that one.
Right, Luke, we'll let you go. We know that you're busy with patients.
Thanks very much, man. Really good.
Enjoyable.
Thanks,
really enjoyable. Look after yourself. We'll see you soon.
Cheers,
Bye,
man.
guys.
Take care.
Cheers. Thank you for listening to this episode of Dentology, where we discuss the business of dentistry. If you like what you heard, please do subscribe where you found this episode. That would be amazing. And also follow us on Instagram.